Thomas Zarkin. An article in Wikipedia states, OT3 also deals with Incident 1, set 4 quadrillion years ago. Did Hubbard really write or say that such an incident occurred 4 quadrillion years ago? If so, how does an OT3 reconcile that with the fact that the universe, as most students have learned by the time they graduate from high school, is slightly under 14 billion years old? Well, you see, Thomas, for an OT3, time takes on a different meaning. And for an OT3, operating in their version of space and time, the year will seem like a year to them, but it's actually a billion years to us. Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. That was a total bullshit answer. Here's the real one. In Hubbard's lectures, Hubbard started lecturing on the phenomena of matter, energy, space, and time in 1951, 52 especially, is when he really started going to town on this material. That was a long time ago in terms of advances in physics and whatnot, but we've known that the universe is very, very, has the age that it has for quite some time. And Hubbard was aware of that too. And Hubbard's lectures, he attempted to become an authority figure on physics. And in fact, even said that he had taken the very first class in atomic and molecular physics or phenomena in college. And that's true. What he never told his audience is that he failed that class miserably. So I think he either got a D or an F in it. I mean, he just definitely did not successfully complete the requirements of that course. Yet years later, with no internet to fact check him, you'd have to really go out of your way to fact check Hubbard back in the 1950s. So when he claimed that he had taken this class and he was an authority on these topics, and that his source of data was not only his college education, but also the research that he had done in Dianetics and Scientology. And for Scientologists at that time, this had an air of legitimacy to it, because by 1952, a great chunk of 1951 and all of 1952 was filled up with research and lecturing on the subject of what Hubbard referred to as the whole track. The whole track, right? If you have, in Dianetics, you have a time track. That's the period of consecutive moments of your life. But the whole track is all the incidents and moments of time that occurred for your entire life cycle as a Thetan in this universe. And that goes back 4 quadrillion years, because that is the time in Incident 1, according to Hubbard at OT3, when Thetans first entered the physical universe. He doesn't say necessarily that that is the creation of the physical universe, but it's implied, because he, of course, later on in Scientology materials said very, very, very distinctly that this whole universe, everything you experience, is a creation of you as a spiritual entity, and all the other spiritual entities that are here in this universe, this playground of bodies and planets and universes. All of this is a self-generated illusion that all the Thetans who are in this world or universe agree is real, and they've agreed to all the particulars of it, and so therefore it's real, right? Now, never mind the 1,000 questions I'm sure are occurring to you right now on this. Hubbard didn't answer those questions, okay? You're just kind of left with this idea that that reality is agreement, and at a certain level that's true, but at the physical universe level that is not true. That's not how reality works. It doesn't work because we all agree it works, and that's what makes objective reality. That is more a workable definition for a mental understanding or a mental reality of the universe, is when you get into agreement and stuff. So anyway, in terms of objective reality, this was what Hubbard was applying to this. And he said that he got this information from his college education, which he sort of implied he was this, genius in school. Well, kind of. And he said that it had come from the whole track research they'd been doing. Okay, that's where I've been trying to go with this, is that he had been auditing him. He had been getting audited. His wife had been getting audited. He had been auditing all these other people had been auditing people and giving him the notes from those sessions, and they were coming up with this track of incidents that occurred over this long period of time, and they had dated them using the E-meter. Okay, that's the scientific evidence for all of this, is the E-meter. I know what you're thinking, and you're right. But that, at the time, in 1952, it was a machine. It had dials. They responded. When you asked questions, the needles moved. So that must mean something. And Hubbard's explanation, of course, for that was that there was a mental charge connected with these times in the past, these incidents. And Hubbard then claimed that not only was that proof, but also the fact that these same incidents were coming up from one to another person. And if that were true, that would be compelling evidence that maybe something's going on there. If Joe and Nancy and Bill, who have never met, never talked, or interacted in any way, are all coming up with memories of something that happened 14 million years ago, and the details are the same from one to the next to the next, that might be interesting. It certainly would at least provoke further investigation. But Hubbard fixed the game, because his style of auditing people was to ask them very leading questions. And if you can actually go back in the materials of Dianetics and Scientology, and they have transcripts of Hubbard auditing people back during this time period. And what you find when you go through those transcripts are tons and tons of leading questions. Hubbard's asking them about, okay, where's the console? Are you in a spaceship? Because these kinds of questions are priming the person, right? We already know in scientific research that these kind of things are absolutely a no-no, and you can see for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. These are online. You can find them. They're in the Research and Discovery series or volumes. And there are even some lectures of Hubbard, recorded lectures of Hubbard auditing, all through the 1960s. And every time you hear Hubbard audit somebody else, one of the things that Scientologists would often discuss is how his auditing was so smooth and so wonderful. I mean, you had all that, but you also had sometimes some of us would sort of scratch our heads going, we can't audit like that. We're prohibited from auditing like that. You can't ask people questions like that in an auditing session. We have very specific questions or very, specific ways of putting questions together. But Hubbard was always breaking his own rules in his auditing, and leading questions was one of the prime ways he was doing that. So he is the one who primed these people for having the same experience. You see where I'm going with this? So obviously his research trail, quote unquote, cannot be trusted because it's not legitimate. But Hubbard thought it was legitimate, and it met the standard of evidence for Scientologists. So they're willing to believe that a little box with little dials on it that measures skin resistance is more accurate than the telescopes and astronomical calculations and all of that work that gets done in astronomy and physics. Science, real science, right? Based on actual observations, verified by others, peer-reviewed. I mean, all this stuff that scientists have to go through in order to get their findings agreed upon and accepted. Hubbard didn't want anything to do with that. He thought that he castigated that. He thought that all that was ridiculous, and scientists didn't know what they were talking about. And he specifically said, just to put a cherry on the top of this whole thing and wrap up this question, he specifically said, if you're familiar with carbon dating and how carbon dating is used to date how much carbon is in organic material, and you can get a date based on the half-life of the carbon atom, from those calculations, Hubbard said that those calculations are based on an assumption of how much carbon was in the universe to begin with, and those assumptions were wrong. So all the dating that is done with carbon dating, he invalidated. He said, nope, things are much, much older than they think they are. And all the dating systems are totally wrong. Okay, and he just said that flat out. I've never forgotten that piece of information I've learned from him. So that is sort of the way he talks to Scientologists to convince them that he's the one who knows what he's talking about, and all of science doesn't. There you go.